Welcome to Candid Conversation, a monthly discussion about agricultural and rural issues. I'm Tim Thornberry, editor of the Kentucky Farm Bureau News. In the studio today, we have Dani Rodgers. She is the partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Thank you for inviting me.
For those folks who don't know, 2020 is a census year. And so, Dani, would you give us a little history about the census? What's it all about?
Sure. So 1790 was the first census that we did, and the Constitution says in Article 1, Section 2 that every 10 years we're to do a count of all the people living in the United States. And so we've been keeping up with that so far. So
that's
good.
Kind of cool. So every 10 years, for
every year ending in a zero,
1790, we've done a census.
You'll see us. Yes.
Some people are a little bit afraid of that for some reason. I know the other day, just for instance, somebody knocked on my door and they identified themselves as a census worker to verify addresses. And now I knew to look at his ID and do a couple of things, to make sure that he was who he said he was.
Right.
But people are a little leery of that these days. So how do you get around that if you're working for the Census Bureau?
There are a couple of different things. So first, I would like to say that there are two parts of the census. There's the American Community Survey, which used to be what was the long form of the census back in 2000. And they separated that part out. They got all the details, those juicy details that people Google all the time. And they created a whole section of the census about that. And they are every single year. They'll do a sample group of houses, about 250,000 houses, and ask more detailed questions. We, the decennial census, only have 9 questions on our questionnaire, and so we want to know the basics. They want to know how people live in the United States. We want to know how many people live in the United States, and that's it. And so if somebody is coming to your door around these times, it could be that they are with the ACS. Back August through October, I believe, we did a lot of the address canvassing. And there shouldn't be anybody else coming to your door until May-ish, because the mid-March area, that time, March 12th through the 20th, is going to be the first of 5 mailings where you'll get something in the mail for the very first time saying you can go online and respond to the census. You can do it online, by phone, or by mail on your own. So mid-March through the end of April, you can do it on your own. Nobody's coming to your door. I'm an introvert. I don't like people knocking on my door anyway, but that's a great way to avoid that. If you are wanting to still participate in the census but don't want people knocking on your door, do it online, by phone, or by mail. In May is when people are going to start knocking on the door, but the thing is, we have IDs. We have a bag that says US Census Bureau. We have a piece of paper that identifies who we are. You can go online, type in our names, and see if we actually work with the US Census Bureau. But all of your information is completely protected by Title 13. So you are protected in the sense that no law enforcement agency can use any of the information that we gather. That means ICE, that means Homeland Security, that means your landlord, that means local police. Nothing that we take up can be used by any law enforcement agency. It's protected for 72 years. It's private for 72 years. And so nothing that is an identifying information about you, your address, your name, or any of that stuff is going to be available for 72 years. And the most important thing for me anyway is that, as you can tell, I'm too cute for prison. But anybody who has taken the lifelong oath, which everybody has with the U.S. Census Bureau, to keep this information private, then we have a penalty of like 5 years in prison and $250,000 that we have to pay if we divulge any of that information. And we're not going to do that. So it's very much protected by law.
Before I get into particulars about the importance of being counted and participating in the census, is this the first year that that folks can go online to do this?
Yes, it's the very first time that we're able to do this. And this is going to be great because, again, for people who maybe had less access to the paper form or maybe didn't know about it, we're doing a lot more advertising to let people know that you can go online. And it's quick and easy, and nobody has to interact with you if you don't want them to. The questions that we ask are basic. The things that you have on social media are typically more involved than what we ask. You'll have your name, your race, your address, how many people are living in the home, what's your age, those types of things. We ask your phone number, but that's only if you leave something blank. We can call and follow up and check and make sure that you meant to do that. But other than that, that's all we want. Anything that we take up is going to be stripped of all identifying information and just stats by the time it leaves our department. So
Sounds like you folks have really gone way out of your way to create a real comfort zone there.
Absolutely. We want people to feel not only that they can do it, but that they want to do it, because it's really a huge thing that you can do for your community. There's over $675 billion worth of federal funding that's given out every single year. That's billion with a B, every single year, for the communities that are shown through the population count, right? So if you are a part of a community and you want more schools in your area, you have to show that there are kids that live in that area. And it's not what you know, it's what we count. So whatever numbers we get in 2020 are going to be used for the next 10 years. That's why it's so important to be as accurate as possible. I don't have kids, I have dogs, and that's basically for all of humanity. But I feel like if kids are showing up the first day of school and we only have a certain count of those kids, but say 300 extra kids show up that first day of school that weren't counted, that budget for Head Start programming, your lunches, all of that budgeting has already been set based off of the numbers that we got. So we really need to make sure that on a state level, local level, community level, everybody gets counted.
Danny, it sort of led into my next question. Also, is our representation, is that based on the numbers that the Census Bureau gets every year in a sense, or every 10 years rather in a sense?
Absolutely. So in the House of Representatives, there are 435 seats in the House of Representatives, and they are apportioned based off of the population. So in 2010, I believe Texas gained 3 seats. We in Kentucky have 6 seats, and we've had 6 since 1990. The last time we had 7 was in 1990, I believe. And then after that census, we lost a seat. So if our population booms based off of this count, we could stand to gain a seat in the House of Representatives. State and local government officials, they also use this information for redistricting. So I'm sure that they're very much interested in making sure these numbers are as accurate as possible, because that means they get to keep a job. But we redistrict based off of population shifts. And so we really need to have this be as accurate as possible, because that representation is power.
Danny, so many of the members that we have in our organization live on farms. They live in rural communities. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on the importance in those rural communities. You know, many of the services are the same. So whether you live in the big city or you live out in the country, being counted is really important.
Absolutely. So the funding, the $675 billion and more, is distributed amongst like housing, government assistance programs like WIC or SNAP. They are used for veteran affairs. They are used for the school system. They're used if you don't care anything about government assistance, but you just don't like potholes. Guess what? That census information is used to make sure that those potholes are filled in your area, because we need to know how many people are going up and down those roads, right? Mm-hmm. So if you are in a rural area, and in rural areas are considered what are called hard to count communities. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of different hard to count communities. There are seniors, LGBTQ communities, communities of color, non-English speaking communities, rural communities. These communities are ones that either have varied access to the same information that you would have in a more metropolitan area, but we want to make sure that that information gets out to them, right? Because some people in some communities are leery of the government. You know, I can't say I don't understand. Leery of the government, just don't understand why it works. And so we have to get that information out to as many people as possible, because if you want certain programs, certain grants that are federally funded, you have to show that you as a community are there. Mm-hmm. And in those rural communities, it's very difficult to reach everybody. And it takes a lot of the neighbors to be the ones to say, we know that there are people over here. You may not have been able to spot them from the road, but we know that they're here. And so one of the ways that we're trying to reach out to these hard to count communities and rural communities is to have people from the community work with us as much as possible to get the word out and to do the follow-up count that I mentioned in May. So it's a lot different to have your neighbor knocking on your door saying, hey, we have these 9 questions we want the answers to, so that it can help get us the funding that we need in our communities, versus flying somebody in from another state who has no idea about the area. So we really need that kind of involvement on a very base level.
You know, in the past, I've signed up for emails where I get maybe something once a week from the US Census Bureau, and I have a very interesting fact and a little story to go with it. So the Census Bureau is not just something that activates every 10 years.
Right.
It's continual, and they provided I found they provided a wealth of information out there that some I could use, and some was just interesting. Can you talk to me a little bit about some of the other information that the Census Bureau provides?
Absolutely. When people go on to whatever their search engine of choice, and they want to know how many farms are in Kentucky, for example, the only way they're going to get that information is from census information. It starts with census information, and people extrapolate that from different organizations and make it into something else. If you want to know about healthcare issues, you want to know about what is the smoking rate of people in the state of Kentucky, that type of thing. That research comes from basic census information. And like I mentioned before with the American Community Survey that has the more detailed information versus the decennial census that has the population count, both of them work together to create those numbers. And if you want to know where food insecurities are, if you want to know how many single parent households are there, that stuff comes from the combined efforts of our Census Bureau to get that data. And then other organizations use that basic data and then use that for the needs that people are Googling out there.
And some of this information is so very interesting.
Yeah.
And some of it dates back to, decades and decades ago. Mm-hmm. So it's really was sort of fun for me to get those. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that you encourage folks to sign up to get that information.
Absolutely. We have census.gov, census.gov. That's the site that you can go to. But specifically for this year, 2020 census.gov is a site that we encourage people to go to. And if you want to be a partner, meaning that you want to have a hand in making sure that the word gets out and that this education is widespread, you can go to 2020census.gov/partners, and they have a number of outreach materials you can print if you want to do PSAs, if you want to do social media plugs. They have things already written up that you can copy and paste into your social media. And they have all kinds of different links to ACS information and other information that may be of interest to you based on your state or your local level government, mm-hmm. however you want to do that. They have all kinds of information there. It's available to everybody.
Danny, we were talking earlier about the ability to go online to do this. Mm-hmm. And in this age of online information, we see a lot of things that aren't really real out there. Mm-hmm. Some call it spam, mm-hmm. Whatever they want to call it. We see a lot of that. Is there any advice that you can provide to folks out there, what to watch for, what's real, what's not real?
Absolutely. So I mentioned some of the questions that we ask, and there are only 9 questions. There may be more, but they're in the same vein of questioning if there's more than one person in the house, for example. But we will never ask you your social security number. We will never ask you for financial donations or your credit card information, never ask your political affiliation, mother's maiden name, citizenship status, and the decennial. We won't be asking any of those questions. So if you see something with those questions on there, it's not us. Now, the ACS may have more detailed questions, and they may ask a citizenship, but that's still to get a snapshot of what's in the United States. It's not to use against anybody. Again, it's just so that we have an idea of who's living here in the United States, and people can use that information to extrapolate. But it's still protected under Title 13. Another thing, I had a woman that came up to me and said, I got the census sheet that you all sent me. It's got $10 attached to it. And I said, listen, it wasn't from us. I'm trying to get pins to be able to pass out to people. I know if they're giving you $10 a piece, then I have questions. So we're not going to pay you to do it. We want you to want to do it, and mm-hmm. it's a civic duty to be able to do that. And you can always go online to 2020census.gov/rumors if there's a hoax that you've heard of, or to see what the latest scams that may be out there or things that people have uploaded, so that you can be aware of what's going on, so that you can know right from what's wrong.
Are links in those types of emails another red flag if they say click on this link to go here? Is that, I know that we hear that sometimes when it's something from a bank or something like that.
Right. Any questions that you may have, again, the main sites for us are census.gov and 2020census.gov. Anything that doesn't have that in there, you can always go to one of those sites it's legitimate site and plug it in and type it into the rumors website and see if maybe it comes up as a rumor, if you have any questions about it. And you can always call. There are a number of different numbers there for your area that you can call and say, is this real or is this not? So we don't want anybody getting scammed in any way.
You also mentioned that there are a lot of people that it's going to take to do the census. Are you hiring? I guess that's the question.
Goodness, we are so much hiring. So we want as many people as possible to apply at 2020census.gov/jobs. Y'all are going to get tired of hearing me say the link, but at least it'll stick with you. 2020census.gov/jobs. And here locally, statewide, there's nothing less than $14 an hour, 58 cents a mile reimbursement, full-time, part-time, flexible hours, and weekly pay. These are all great things that people like to hear. I'm from Fayette County. In Fayette County, it's $19 an hour. Here, I think it might be like $21 an hour in Jefferson County. But go online and apply. We need as many people as possible because, people may apply and then not be interested later, but we want to make sure that we have enough people when May comes around to be able to go around and knock on these doors, again, from the communities that are some of the harder to count communities. And we want to make sure that you know that you're going to be paid for all your training. And with that reimbursement, that's going to be a huge thing, I think, for a lot of people who are afraid to travel outside of their county. It's a great incentive to want to travel to some other counties if you're needed, because you get reimbursed for that. So we need as many people as possible because it takes all of us to make sure that we have this accurate count.
I have a question that really has nothing to do with how important the census is. But I know that you said our information is guarded for 72 years. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that are very interested in their ancestry if you go back a couple of hundred years or 100 years or a long time ago. And I know that I've done the same thing. Are the old census records something that they can go to maybe see where a great-grandparent lived or who they were married to or how many children they had or things like that?
Absolutely. And I actually did that for myself. My family, we only were able to trace back as far as my great-grandmother. But I went and looked and found census records that showed my great-grandmother's parents and all the kids that they had. And we had never up to this year known about the rest of them. And so absolutely, that information is available. The 72-year rule wasn't implemented until 1978. So anything before that is out there, and it's open to anybody to look at and to find that bit of history for themselves. But anything that we collect for this year, sorry, you're not going to see it for 72 years. It was assumed that was going to be the lifespan, so...
But in 4 generations from now,
sure, absolutely,
the things that we do now may provide valuable information to a distant relative.
Absolutely,
and I think that's sort of a great part of this whole process.
Absolutely,
is that you might be doing something.
You're a part of
future
history.
Generations. You're part of history.
You're absolutely a part of history.
Great, great. Dani, thank you so much for being here today. I could ask a million more questions, but we really appreciate it, and we'll put a lot of this information with an article on our website, and we invite all you out there to tune in. This our Candid Conversation is a podcast now, and we invite you all to take part in that or go online to any of our social media sites to view any of the information that we do here at Kentucky Farm Bureau. But thanks for joining us. Dani, thank you again, and we look forward to our next Candid Conversation.